Hello, and welcome to another video from the YouTube channel, From Religion to Agnostic. Gomer was the eldest son of Japeth, and of the Japhetic line, and father of Ashkenaz, Riphath and Togarmah, according to the Table of Nations, in the Hebrew Bible, Genesis 10. The eponymous Gomer, standing for the whole family, as the compilers of the Jewish Encyclopedia expressed it, is also mentioned in Book of Ezekiel 38:6 as the ally of Gog, the chief of the land of Magog. The Hebrew name Gomer refers to the Cimmerians, who dwelt in what is now southern Russia, beyond the Caucasus, and attacked Assyria in the late 7th century BC. The Assyrians called them Gimeri. The Cimmerian king Tishba was defeated by Esarhaddon of Assyria sometime between 681 and 668 BC. Traditional identifications. Josephus placed Gomer and the Gomerites in Anatolian Galatia. For Gomer founded those whom the Greeks now call Galatians, but were then called Gomerites. Galatia in fact takes its name from the ancient Gauls, Celts, who settled there. However, the later Christian writer Hippolytus of Rome in c. 234 assigned Gomer as the ancestor of the Cappadocians, neighbors of the Galatians. Jerome, c. 390, and Isidore of Seville, c. 600, followed Josephus' identification of Gomer with the Galatians, Gauls, and Celts. According to Tractate Yuma, in the Talmud, Gomer is identified as Jeremiah. In Islamic folklore, the Persian historian Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari, c. 915, recounts a Persian tradition that Gomer lived to the age of 1000, noting that this record equaled that of Nimrod, but was unsurpassed by anyone else mentioned in the Torah. The Cimbri were a tribe settled on Jutland Peninsula in Germania, now Denmark, ca. 200 BC, who were variously identified in ancient times as Cimmerian, Germanic, or Celtic. In later times, some scholars connected them with the Welsh people, and descendants of Gomer. Among the first authors to identify Gomer, the Cimmerians, and Cimbri, with the Welsh name for themselves, Cymri, was the English antiquarian William Camden in his Britannia, first published in 1586. In his 1716 book Drychy Prif Esod, Welsh antiquary Theophilus Evans also posited that the Welsh were descended from the Cimmerians and from Gomer. This was followed by a number of later writers of the 18th and 19th centuries. This etymology is considered false by modern Celtic linguists, who follow the etymology proposed by Johann Caspar Zeus in 1853, which derives cymry from the Brythonic word comrogos, fellow countrymen. The name Gomer, as in the pen name of 19th century editor and author Joseph Harris, for instance, and its modern Welsh derivatives, such as Gomerig, as an alternative name for the Welsh language, became fashionable for a time in Wales, but the Gomerian theory itself has long since been discredited as an antiquarian hypothesis with no historical or linguistic validity. In 1498 Agno de Viterbo published fragments known as Pseudobarosus, now considered a forgery, claiming that Babylonian records had shown that Cummerus Gallus, i.e. Gomer son of Japheth, had first settled in Cumera, now Italy, in the 10th year of Nimrod following the dispersion of peoples. In addition, Tuiscin, whom Pseudobarosus calls the fourth son of Noah, and says ruled first in Germany/Scythia, was identified by later historians, e.g. Johannes Avant Enus, as none other than Ashkenaz, Gomer's son. Gomer's descendants are mentioned. 3 sons of Gomer are mentioned in Genesis 10, namely Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz in the Hebrew Bible is one of the descendants of Noah. Ashkenaz is the first son of Gomer, and a Japhetic patriarch in the Table of Nations. In rabbinic literature, the kingdom of Ashkenaz was first associated with the Scythian region, then later with the Slavic territories, and, from the 11th century onwards, with Germany and northern Europe. His name is related to the Assyrian Ascuza, Iskuse, a people who expelled the Cimmerians from the Armenian highland of the upper Euphrates area. Medieval Jews associated the term with the geographical area centered on the Rhineland of western Germany. As a result, the Jewish culture that developed in that area came to be called Ashkenazi, the only form of the term in use today. In the genealogies of the Hebrew Bible, Ashkenaz was a descendant of Noah. He was the first son of Gomer and brother of Riphath and Togarmah, Genesis 10:3, 1 Chronicles 1:6, with Gomer being the grandson of Noah through Japeth. According to Jeremiah 51:27, a kingdom of Ashkenaz was to be called together with Ararat and Mini against Babylon, which reads, Set ye up a standard in the land, blow the trumpet among the nations, prepare the nations against her, i.e. Babylon, call together against her the kingdoms of Ararat, Mini, and Ashkenaz. Appoint a captain against her, cause the horses to come up as the rough caterpillars. According to the Encyclopedia Biblica, Ashkenaz must have been one of the migratory peoples which in the time of Esarhaddon, burst upon the northern provinces of Asia Minor, and upon Armenia. One branch of this great migration appears to have reached Lake Urumia. For in the revolt which Esarhaddon chastised, the Manna, who lived to the southwest of that lake, sought the help of Ispakai, of the land of Askuza, a name, originally perhaps Askunza, which the skepticism of Dillman need not hinder us from identifying with Ashkenaz, and from considering as that of a horde from the north, of Indo-Germanic origin, which settled on the south of Lake Urumia. In medieval reception, Rabbinic Judaism and rabbinic literature, the kingdom of Ashkenaz was first associated with the Scythian region, then later with the Slavic territories, and, from the 11th century onwards, with northern Europe and Germany. The region of Ashkenaz was centered on the Rhineland and the Palatinate, notably Worms and Speyer, in what is now the westernmost part of Germany. Its geographic extent did not coincide with the German Christian principalities of the time, and it included northern France. How the name of Ashkenaz came to be associated in the rabbinic literature with the Rhineland is a subject of speculation. In rabbinic literature from the 11th century, Ashkenaz was considered the ruler of a kingdom in the north and of the northern and Germanic people. Ashkenazi Jews. Sometime in the post-biblical early medieval period, the Jews of Central and South Central Europe came to be called by the name Ashkenazim, in conformity with the custom of designating areas of Jewish settlement with biblical names, Spain being identified as Sepharad, Obadiah 1:20, France as Tsarfat, 1 Kings 17:9, and Bohemia as land of Canaan. By the High Medieval period, Talmudic commentators like Rashi began to use Ashkenaz and or Eretz Ashkenaz to designate Germany, earlier known as Lothar, where, especially in the Rhineland communities of Speyer, Worms, and Mainz, the most important Jewish communities arose. Rashi uses Leshon Ashkenaz, Ashkenazi language, to describe the German language, and Byzantium and Syrian Jewish letters referred to the Crusaders as Ashkenazim. Given the close links between the Jewish communities of France and Germany following the Carolingian unification, the term Ashkenazi came to refer to both the Jews of medieval Germany and France. Ashkenazi Jewish culture later spread in the 16th century into Eastern Europe, where their rite replaced that of existing Jewish communities whom some scholars believe to have been larger in demographics than the Ashkenazi Jews themselves, and then to all parts of the world with the migrations of Jews who identified as Ashkenazi Jews. In Armenian tradition, Ashkenaz, along with Togarmah, was considered among the ancestors of the Armenians. Koryuin, the earliest Armenian historian, calls the Armenians an Askanachan, i.e., Ashkenazi, nation. He starts the Life of Mashtats with these words. I had been thinking of the God-given alphabet of the Askanachan nation and of the land of Armenia, when, in what time, and through what kind of man that new divine gift had been bestowed. Later Armenian authors concur with this. Hovayan's Drask Hanakertsi, 10th century, writes. The sixth son was Tiras, from whom were born our very own Ashkenaz and Togarmah Targum, who named the country that he possessed Thrace after himself, as well as Chittim Kaidim, who brought under his sway the Macedonians. The sons of Tiras were Ashkenaz, from whom descended the Sarmatians, Riphath, whence the Soramatians Soramatk, and Togarmah, who according to Jeremiah subjugated the Ashkenazian army and called it the house of Togarmah, for at first Ashkenaz had named our people after himself in accord with the law of seniority, as we shall explain in its proper place. Because of this tradition, Ashkenaz is a male given name still used today by Armenians. German royal genealogy. In 1498, a monk named Anyoda Viterbo published fragments known as Pseudobarosus, now considered a forgery, claiming that Babylonian records had shown that Noah had more sons than the 3 sons of his listed in the Bible. Specifically, Tuiscin or Tuisto is given as the 4th son of Noah, who had been the first ruler of Scythia and Germany following the dispersion of peoples, with him being succeeded by his son Munus as the 2nd king. Later historians, e.g. Johannes Aventinus and Johann Hubner, managed to furnish numerous further details, including the assertion by James Anderson in the early 18th century that this Tuiscin was in fact none other than the biblical Ashkenaz, son of Gomer. James Anderson's 1732-tome Royal Genealogies reports a significant number of antiquarian or mythographic traditions regarding Ashkenaz as the first king of ancient Germany, for example the following entry. Ashkenaz, or Ashkenaz, called by Avant Enus Tuisco the Giant, and by others Tuisto or Tuizo, whom Avant Enus makes the fourth son of Noah, and that he was born after the flood, but without authority, was sent by Noah into Europe, after the flood 131 years, with 20 captains, and made a settlement near the Tanas, on the west coast of the Euxine Sea, by some called Askin from him, and there founded the kingdom of the Germans and the Sarmatians, when Ashkenaz himself was 24 years old, for he lived above 200 years, and reigned 176. In the votiables of Saxony and Hesse, there are some villages of the name Ashkenaz, and from him the Jews call the Germans Ashkenaz, but in the Saxonic and Italian, they are called Tuis Cones, from Tuisco his other name. In the 25th year of his reign, he partitioned the kingdom into toparchies, tetrarchies, and governments, and brought colonies from diverse parts to increase it. He built the city Duisburg, made a body of laws in verse, and invented letters, which Cadmos later imitated, for the Greek and High Dutch are alike in many words. The 20 captains or dukes that came with Ashkenaz are, Sarmata, from whom Sarmatia, Dacus or Danus, Dania, or Denmark, Geta from whom the Geti, Gotha from whom the Goths, Tibuscus, people on the river Tibuscus, Mosia, or Mysia, Phrygus or Brygus, Phrygia, Thenus, or Bithynia, Dalmata or Dalmatia, Jader or Jadera Colonia, Albanus from whom Albania, Zavis, the river Save, Panis or Pannonia, Salon, the town Sale, Uzalus, the Uzali, Hister or Istria, Agilas, Dietas, Ibalus, people that of old dwelt between the rivers Enos and Rhinus, Epirus, from whom Epirus. Ashkenaz had a brother called Scytha, say the Germans, the father of the Scythians, for which the Germans have of old been called Scythians too, very justly, for they came mostly from old Scythia, and Germany had several ancient names, for that part next to the Euxine was called Scythia, and the country of the Gets, but the parts east of the Vistula or Wasel were called Sarmatia Europea, and westward it was called Gallia, Celtica, Alemannia, Francia, and Teutonia, for Old Germany comprehended the greater part of Europe, and those called Gauls were all Old Germans, who by ancient authors were called Celts, Gauls, and Galatians, which is confirmed by the historians Strabo and Avant Enus, and by Alcidius in his chronology, p. 201 etc. Ashkenaz, or Tuisco, after his death, was worshipped as the ambassador and interpreter of the gods, and from thence called the first German Mercury, from Tuitseben to interpret. In the 19th century, the German theologian August Wilhelm Noble again equated Ashkenaz with the Germans, deriving the name of the Aesir from Ashkenaz. Riphath, spelled Diphath in Chronicles. Riphath was great-grandson of Noah, grandson of Japeth, son of Gomer, Japheth's eldest, younger brother of Ashkenaz, and older brother of Togarmah according to the Table of Nations in the Hebrew Bible, Genesis 10:3, 1 Chronicles 1:6. The name appears in some copies of 1 Chronicles as Diphath, due to the similarities of the characters Resh and Dalet in the Hebrew and Aramaic alphabets. Analysis: his identity is completely unknown. He was supposed by Flavius Josephus to have been the ancestor of the Riphathians, now called Paphlagonians. Hippolytus of Rome made him the ancestor of the Sarmatians, as distinct from the Sarmatians, whom he called descendants of Riphath's elder brother, Ashkenaz. Riphath has often been connected with the Riphaean mountains of classical Greek geography, in whose foothills the Arimaspi, also called Aramphei, or Riphaeans, were said to live. These were usually identified with the Ural Mountains by authors such as Pliny the Elder. August Wilhelm Noble proposed that Riphath begot the Celtic peoples, who according to Plutarch had crossed from the Riphaean mountains while en route to northern Europe. Smith's Bible Dictionary also forwards Noble's notion that the Carpathian Mountains in the northeast of Dacia is the site of the Riphath or Riphaean Mountains. Some versions of the Middle Irish work Lebergabula Aaron give as an alternate name, Riphath Scott, son of Gomer, in place of Phineas Farsa, as a Scythian ancestor of the Goidels. Togarmah. Togarmah is a figure in the Table of Nations, in Genesis 10, the list of descendants of Noah that represents the peoples known to the ancient Hebrews. Togarmah is among the descendants of Japeth and is thought to represent some people located in Anatolia. Medieval traditions variously claimed Togarmah as the legendary ancestor of peoples in the Caucasus and Western Asia, including the Armenians, as descendants of the older son of Togarmah, the Georgians, as descendants of second son Kartlos, many nationalities of North Caucasus and Turkic peoples, i.e. Oguzes, Hazars, Uyghurs. Children of Ashkenaz were originally identified with the Scythians, Assyrian Ishkuza, then after the 11th century, with Germany. Ancient Armenian and Georgian chronicles lists Togarmah as the ancestor of both people who originally inhabited the land between two Black and Caspian seas and between two inaccessible mountains, Mount Elbrus and Mount Ararat respectively. According to Hazar records, Togarmah is regarded as the ancestor of the Turkic-speaking peoples. Alrighty, and that will do it for this video. Catch you on the next one. Have a great day, and be safe. If you enjoyed this video, please think about subscribing, as well as hitting the like and sharing would help out a lot. Thank you all, peace out, people.